Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, and this is Style in V, and this is a tutorial of how to make this bubble skirt as you can see right here. So if it's something you're interested in, kindly stay tuned and watch till the end of how to make this bubble skirt. Okay, so let's get started. So to make this skirt, you'll be needing your lining piece right here, your Ankara. So this is about 2 yards of Ankara, and also your thread, your scissors. If you're using an elastic, you can also go ahead and use your elastic. So let's get started. We'll be starting with the lining piece. Okay, so the width of this lining should be your hip circumference plus 10 inches. That is the width of the lining we are working with. So for the length, since we're using a waistband of 2 inches, I'll go ahead and minus 2 inches and I will mark out my length. I'm using a length of 18 inches and I added 1 inch for joining allowance both at the lower side and on the upper side of the lining piece. Okay, so I'll go ahead and add 1 inch, which makes it 19 inches. Now I will take all my measurements after the 2 inches for my band, and I'll go ahead and mark the 19 inches like this. Okay, so remember I said the width of this lining is the hip circumference plus 10 inches. So I'll just go ahead and mark out the length first like this, as you can see me doing right here. So the next thing I will do is to take out 5 inches from my lining piece. So now this 5 inches I am taking out from the lining piece, I'll replace it on my Ankara fabric, okay, to give it that bubble effect. So that is why I am taking away this 5 inches from my lining piece. I'll be replacing it on my Ankara fabric when cutting my Ankara fabric. So I'll just go ahead and minus the 5 inches like this from the length, as you can see me doing right here. So you can do 4 inches, you can do 5 inches, depending on how you want to replace yours on your Ankara fabric. So I'll just go ahead and take out 5 inches like this, and this is all for the drafting, and I'll just go ahead and cut. So look at where I am cutting from. I'm cutting the upper line right here. So this is what we have. So let's go ahead and reconfirm the length. Now remember 2 inches for the band and 5 inches that will replace with the Ankara fabric. So that makes it 7, and minus it will still give you 12 inches. That is 12 plus 7 is 19 inches, and our width still remain hip circumference plus 10 inches. So let's work on the Ankara fabric. So I have with me about 2 yards of Ankara fabric. I will also go ahead and join it, I'll go ahead and join the Ankara fabric. Now for the width of this Ankara fabric, you will do your hip circumference multiply by 3. Okay, you do your hip circumference multiply by 3. That will be the width of your Ankara fabric. And for the length, you go ahead and minus your 2 inches for your band, and you take your 19 inches as the skirt length, and also replace the 5 inches we took from the lining piece. Okay, yes, remember we took 5 inches from the lining piece, so you go ahead and replace that 5 inches on your Ankara fabric. So let me repeat myself again. Remember I said you minus 2 inches for your elastic, you get your skirt length of 19 inches, and you replace the 5 inches you took from your lining piece to your Ankara piece. Okay, so and that's all. So the next thing I'll just go ahead to do is to notch. I will notch the upper side and the lower side of my lining piece, and also on my Ankara fabric. Now when I'm done on the upper side, I'll go ahead and run a loose stitch on the lining piece. I'll run a loose stitch on the lining piece and also on the Ankara piece. I'll just go ahead and run a loose stitch on the upper side of the Ankara piece and also on the lower side of the Ankara piece. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and run a loose stitch on the upper side and the lower side of the Ankara, and on the upper side of the lining piece I'll just go ahead and run a loose stitch right here. So I am done running a loose stitch on the upper side and also on the lower side. Now we will work on the lower side first, the lower side of the Ankara first. So I'll just go ahead and gather it. That is, I'll draw the rope. I'll go ahead and gather it to meet the width of my lining piece like this. I'll go ahead and gather it to meet the width of my lining piece right here. Okay, I'll just go ahead and gather it to ensure that the measurements will fit in the width of my lining piece. So I'll go ahead and drag the rope until I get to the end part like this, as you can see me doing right here. So I'll keep dragging it until I get to the end of the fabric. So guys, I am done making the gathers, and this is what we have. So the next thing for you to do is to push the gathers inside by 1.5 inches on both sides. So this is for joining the Ankara piece to the lining piece, and also for your zipper allowance, so you don't need a gathers effect on that particular side. So the next thing for us to do is to place the lower side of our lining piece to this lower side of our skirt that we did gathers on, and you just go ahead and place it on the right side and sew. Okay, so you just go ahead and sew it from one end to another. So guys, I am done sewing this, and this is what we have. So you can see what the lower side looks like right here. So the next thing for us to do is to work on the upper side of the skirt. Remember, we've gone ahead to run a loose stitch on this side, so I'll go ahead and drag it. That is to give it the gathers form. I will gather it to my waist circumference plus 3 inches. Okay, so I'll go ahead and drag it to meet my waist circumference plus 3 inches, and I'll do the same thing to my lining piece also. I'll also go ahead and drag it to give it the gathers form of my waist circumference plus 3 inches. So guys, I am done, and this is what we have. So you can see what we have right here. So I'll also go ahead and did the same gathers on the lining piece like this. So this is my waist circumference plus 3 inches. Now I'll go ahead and sew the inside first, so that I'll cover the rough edge. Now I'll place them, the upper side must meet together like this. Okay, so the upper side must meet together, and I'll just go ahead and arrange it like this, and I will sew using 1/2 an inch. Okay, I'll just go ahead and sew using 1/2 an inch to cover up this side like this, so that it won't be rough on the outer part. Whatever thing I do to one end, I will do it to the other end like this. So guys, I am done sewing, and this is what we have. Okay, I've gone ahead to cover up this space, and this is what we have. So the next thing for us to do is to sew on this upper side. I'll just go ahead and sew. Now look at the space I left for my zipper. Whatever thing you do to one end, you go ahead and do it to the other end, and you just go ahead and sew this upper side to hold both the Ankara fabric and the lining piece together. So before doing this, please ensure that your bubble skirt is placed well. That is, you go ahead and just arrange the gathers very well before sewing this upper side. So I'll take it to my sewing machine to sew this upper side together like so. So guys, I am done sewing, and this is what we have. So the next thing for us to do is to work on the band. Yes, I'll go ahead and keep this aside and work on the band. So this is the inside. You can see how neat it is, and this is the outer parts of this. Okay, so let's work on the band. So the width of your band will be your waist circumference plus 2 inches. Yes, the width of your band will be the waist circumference of plus 2 inches. So now for the length of the band, I did 5 inches, and I went ahead to fold it by 1/2 an inch on both sides. Then after ironing the 1/2 an inch on both sides, I went ahead to cover it up and ironed it. So remember, the band is supposed to be 2 inches on fold. Okay, so the next thing I'll go ahead to do is to sew, and I'll place it right side of the band facing the wrong side of the skirt, the right side of the band like this, facing the wrong side of the skirt, and I'll go ahead and sew it 1/2 inch from one end of the skirt to meet the other end. So guys, I am done sewing, and this is what we have right here. So this is the inside of our skirt, and this is the outer part of our skirt. So the next thing I'll go ahead to do is to fold it like this. Remember, I ironed it 1/2 inch on both sides, so the other 1/2 inch is what I will use in sewing this upper side. I'll go ahead and sew it like this. Okay, I'll go ahead and sew on the tip of this band like this to the skirt from one end to meet the other end. So guys, I am done sewing this, and this is what we have right here. So you can see how our skirt is right here, the band and the skirt. So the next thing for us to do is to fix in our zipper, and I'll go ahead and fold my skirt like this into 2 equal halves, and from the waistband you can come down by 6 to 7 inches depending on your body size. You can even do 8 inches. So but for this measurement, I came down by 7 inches, and I'll sew the remaining length like this. Okay, so I came down by 7 inches and I came in by 1 inch. That is for my zipper allowance that I left earlier, and I'll go ahead and sew from the 7 inches straight down to meet the hem of the skirt. And when I am done, I will fix in my zipper. So this is all for our skirt. I'm done fixing in my zipper, and this is the final look of the skirt. So if you've watched to this point, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and thank you so much for watching. I also wanted to make a top for my skirt. This is the bralette top for it. So thank you so much, and see you in our next video. Bye.